Hello everyone, Scott Myers here at the Self-Storage Academy, which is being held live in Orlando, Florida, March 31st through April 2nd, and I want you to be there. Listen, there has never been a better time to invest in self-storage, and there is no better team than ours to show you how to do it, because we wrote the book on how to invest in self-storage. Literally, I created the best-selling home study system back in 2007, titled How to Find, Evaluate, Purchase, and Manage Self-Storage Facilities. And since then, we have helped thousands of people launch and scale their self-storage business and have now become the nation's go-to resource for all things self-storage. And that's because we not only talk the talk, we walk the walk. Day in and day out since 2005 through now 2 recessions and amassing 2.5 million square feet of self-storage, totaling over 15,000 doors nationwide. There is nobody else that has more experience in self-storage that is teaching people how to invest in self-storage than our team. So if you're ready to launch and scale your self-storage business, then go to selfstorageinvesting.com, click on the events tab to grab your ticket to the upcoming Self-Storage Academy in Orlando. That's March 31st through April 2nd, along with tickets to our virtual academy for those who can't make it or just aren't ready to go live at this time. So that, again, is selfstorageinvesting.com. Click on the event tab, but do it now as seating is limited, and we have sold out every academy since 2008, so go do it now. And on behalf of my team, we look forward to seeing you then. Take care. This is the Self-Storage Podcast, where we share the knowledge and skills from the industry's leading investors, developers, and operators to help you launch and grow your self-storage business. I'm your host, Scott Myers, and over the past 16 years, we have acquired, developed, converted, and syndicated over 2 million square feet of self-storage nationwide with the help of my incredible team at selfstorageinvesting.com, who has helped thousands of people achieve greatness in self-storage. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Self-Storage Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Myers, and this week's guest is Mr. Joe Mendoza. Joe is a real estate entrepreneur who began his first business when he was 13 years old, where he learned very early about management, marketing, sales, and accounting. Joe is now a founder of multiple companies, as well as a licensed California real estate broker, an accredited investor, a certified fund manager, a successful syndicator, and a worldwide business coach. He holds a Bachelor's of Arts degree from San Diego State University and has a passion for being involved with his 2 children who participate in the Boy Scouts of America and various sports activities. Joe currently resides in San Marcos, California, and is also a very active person in his community, giving back where he can. And Joe and I spent a lot of time talking about how he has built his businesses and how he's done so quickly, and that was really with the help of virtual assistants. So we take a deep dive in what it's like to build a team, a staff of folks from all around the world with the skill sets that are particular to the areas in his business that he needs, and that matches them up with the companies and the individuals to fill those positions at a fraction of the cost that he would find for folks here in the United States. So without further ado, please enjoy my wide-ranging conversation with Mr. Joe Mendoza. Hey, Joe, welcome to the show.
Hey, Scott, thanks for being here. I totally appreciate your inviting me on your show.
Yeah, well, a long time coming. I know that our schedules haven't been able to allow this to happen, but so thankful to have you here. And I'm excited to talk about your superpower, because one of the things that we talk about is how to scale, how to grow a business. That's a big part of what we do. But before we dive into that, tell us a little more about yourself. I've given everybody a little bit of background in your bio, but fill in the gaps if you would, and let us know what you're focusing on recently.
Okay, sounds good. So I'll take us way back to when I was in high school. So in high school, one of the things that my dad used to say was, "Hey, Joe, you got to be rich. You got to be rich. You got to be rich." Coming from the Philippines, being like first generation immigrant, he came here as a Navy sailor, and that income was not enough. I mean, I saw them struggle. So he was always saying that. And then one day I was at my uncle's house. I was just kind of hanging out, playing with some of my friends over there. And he goes, "Hey, Joe, I got a couple of tickets to this seminar. It's on real estate and investing." And right there, I kind of knew right away that, like, okay, real estate investing, I think a lot of people get rich this way. So I decided to take those tickets, and lo and behold, I went that evening, and it was Robert Allen live. He was talking on KPBS about his book, Nothing Down in the 90s. I was hooked and didn't turn back ever since.
Well, I think that Mr. Kiyosaki, Mr. Allen, some of the folks that have been around for a long time, Carlton Sheets is probably the first, my first introduction to real estate, and then I've been all through the rest. And I think now, as we get older, I think some people maybe chuckle at some of the folks that we used to listen to and read. But gosh, the foundation is there, and it is an absolutely incredible way to be able to start and open your eyes and see how it's done, from, standing on the shoulders of the giants that have done this before us. So And as we were talking before we hopped on the air here as well, Joe, I know we can't do this alone. We all recognize that we can't do everything. We're not the best at everything, and so we need to begin to, as we grow and scale our business. That means that we need to grow and scale our staff and the folks around us to be able to do so. And one of the hardest things to do is to, when we bring on that first staff member, that first employee. Because then all of a sudden our pay gets, and we view it as our pay being reduced dramatically. But once you understand the power of what's behind that, and recognizing that you can pay somebody less than your hourly rate to be able to do some of these things that you're probably not good at anyways, well, that's the keys to the kingdom, to be able to open that up. And you've done an incredible job of recognizing that and growing and scaling your business by adding staff and doing it the right way. So tell us a little bit more about your journey and how you have added staff members the right way to grow your business.
Okay. So everybody is pretty much, they start at the same point, whether they have a regular job or jump into real estate, whether being an agent or investor, they're a solopreneur. So it's me, myself, and I. And so when I started my journey, it was exactly that. And my first time that I hired my first assistant, I was scared, just like everybody else. How much am I going to pay this person? Can I afford it? What can I give them for work? Some of the common objections I always hear. So I just took a leap of faith and I started part-time. I was lucky where I had some good people around me that identified this one person and said, hey, she's looking for work. She'd probably do really good for you. Have her on board and get her on your team. So I hired her part-time, paid her decent wage, and the rest was history. So whether you're fixing and flipping, buying and holding, doing syndications, you're going to need help. I always say teamwork makes the dream work. So fast forward where I'm at today, I have 3 VAs in the Philippines. I have 5 in India. I have a team in Canada and a team in New York. Now, the reason why, there's multiple purposes in my business. So some are really good at lead generation. Some are really good at tech and computer and SEO. Some of them are really good at some of the admin back office stuff. And so when you look at your business, I mean, there's multiple books out there. Some of my favorites are E-Myth, Traction. As a real estate agent, if you read MREA, Millionaire Real Estate Agent, those are books that helped me scale. So you got to find out, number one, what is your strength? That's where I would really, really start with anybody. If they're looking to grow, looking to scale, you got to find out your DNA. What are you good at? What are you not so good at? What should you delegate? And the rest is history. For me, I'm a very strong DI. So what I needed was an SC. If you don't know what that is, audience, please go to, my favorite is Tony Robbins, the DISC assessment, and pay for the $19.95 for the extra. So you could figure out where do you fit in the DISC personality test. And then don't try to strengthen your weaknesses. Go ahead and hire it out. So like for starters, I hired somebody who was part-time in-house. But for some folks out there who have a regular job, what I would probably recommend is hire somebody either on Fiverr, Upwork, Online Jobs PH. Those are really, really good starting points. Now, a lot of them are freelancers. So the pluses and minuses, if you're just starting out, give some of the smaller jobs. But if you're like, man, I've got a full-time job, I want to get my real estate investing business off the ground, I would hire probably a VA company. Because with a VA company, I mean, there's dozens of them out there. They do a lot of the onboarding, the training, the personality tests, et cetera, et cetera. So really find out who you are, where you are, and then kind of go from there.
Mm-hmm. So tell me about, in each one of those areas, let's say, IT, or on just, straight executive assistant, how do you determine, which countries to go to? You mentioned Canada, you mentioned India, you mentioned the Philippines, in each of those countries, I know, have depending upon schooling and the culture, they strive and they do a little bit better in certain areas versus others. So tell me how you go about and how you went about finding the best places to find the folks for those key positions in the different areas of your business.
That's a great question, Scott. So a lot of it was trial by error because I
Hmm.
have a lot of coaching clients all over the nation and a few, including a few countries. And some of them, there's a stigma. Me being Filipino, sometimes they think, oh, everybody has this heavy accent. When in actuality, English is probably one of the primary, if not the first language in the Philippines. So in Philippines, if you hire any VA from a company, most of them are college graduates. And how I went about hiring them, I got to figure out number one, what do we really, really need first? And so if you're going to go VA, figure out what do you need first? Is it executive admin? Is it the IT support, et cetera, et cetera? If you're not putting them on the phone, then the accent doesn't matter because like on a in real estate, when we talk about like OSAs and ISAs, outbound sales assistants and ISA inside sales assistants, well, the accent does come into play. And when I first hired my first VA, it was through a VA company. And I think they're still around. They're My Outdesk. And the first one that I hired, I wasn't very happy. He wasn't converting. And that was too something people have to look out for when you're interviewing. Make sure you do a really, really good job. And I'm of the philosophy, slow to hire, quick to fire. So my first VA wasn't he wasn't converting very well. So I said, hey, send me another one because this isn't working out. They sent me a second one. Same thing. It didn't work out. The third one, third's a charm. And with the third one, Scott, this was amazing where I hired this VA to prospect for me. And this VA was cold calling random houses. And this works for fix and flippers too out there, where I gave her a script and she was basically randomly calling houses and within less than 2 months. So let's just do simple math. If this VA company is paying, charging me a couple thousand or $1,000 per month in 2 months, that's $2,000. Well, in less than 2 months, I was able to get a listing that I double ended because at the time I didn't really understand the fix and flip game. I made over $20,000 and the VA investment was only $2,000. Second go around, then I went with another VA company. I was building a brokerage. And so at the time, I was building this large company, regular residential real estate sales. And my goal was to recruit. And so in less than 1 year, I gave her my script. This was a totally different VA. She was doing outbound calls to agents. And in less than a year, I was able to grow my company from me and an assistant to 50 agents. So I think the key there, if you're going to put them on the phones, one of the biggest things to my success when I was bringing on those folks was I was role playing every single day. So every time I got them on board, I role played right before their shift. And I said, okay, go get them. And then at the end of the day, they do a final report and give me some feedback. And then the next day, we'd work on it again. And that was how I scaled, a couple different companies. And right now I'm scaling again because I've got multiple different companies going on at the same time. So, like I said earlier, teamwork makes the dream work. So I just got to figure out this is a clue, guys. If you see or hear clients complaining like, oh my God, you're not getting back to me quickly. Oh, you haven't responded to my email. That's a clue that you're going to need some help. And at that point, you got to decide, do I bring somebody in-house or do I go with a VA company or do I go to Fiverr, Upwork, Online Jobs PH? Just got to figure it out. What really helped was I had some coaches and mentors in the beginning that really helped me out. But at this point, now I'm the coach for many where I'm helping them scale, where I'm coaching some brokerages, some investors, some agents, having massive teams in the country.
I'm glad you made the point, Joe, that it's I think some of these some folks that have tried VAs, they just put them in place and hope that they would work because of their resume, and gave no guidance, no coaching or mentoring, and then they failed, and they know that they could go back to the VA company and get another, and then perhaps another. But I'm glad you mentioned after that, that you worked with them and that you mentored them, you gave them the script, and then you did role playing. Because this isn't whether it's an employee or a virtual assistant, it's a staff member, it's a person, it's an individual, and they don't understand your culture, meaning your corporate culture. They don't understand, the complete goal in your organization unless you train them and unless you spend time with them doing that. So if you struggle going through staff members and or VA staff members, then you may want to look inward and take a look at your process for onboarding and getting these people trained so that they are on board. You're all rowing in the same direction. Otherwise, you're not going to get the results that you like, and it's certainly not fair to that individual and or individuals that you bring into your organization if you're not doing the proper training. So, Joe, one of the things I also wanted to touch on is, as you've built out your organization and brought on 50 agents as a result of using VAs, obviously that the staff, that grew as well on the virtual assistant side, and in multiple areas that you mentioned. What is or are some of the areas that you thought, maybe 3-4 years ago that you would never be able to hire, somebody, a virtual assistant for, or somebody overseas? Or maybe is there a role that you tried out and you thought, boy, this is really a stretch to put somebody in this role that maybe surprised even you, that as to how successful it was, and then perhaps why you didn't do it sooner?
Wow, that's a great question, Scott. So sometimes I get that from some of my clients. One of the jobs is probably like the high analytics. So like, I know there's a lot of people trying to go after multifamily, storage units, mobile home parks. Give the spreadsheet, and if you either built it properly or know how to walk them through where to put the data, it's just like anybody else here in the US or overseas. So one of my VAs, her background was a strong accountant. And so whenever I look at a property and I'm looking at the deal analytics to figure out cap rate, IRR, any of that stuff, I'm like, okay, here's the OM, the offering memorandum, plug in these numbers. I want to make sure they're actuals, and let me see what you get. And that kind of blew me away, where like, here I am hiring somebody overseas for a fraction what I would pay somebody here with high analytics. I mean, over here in the US, you're probably talking about a 50 or 60,000 salary. And in the Philippines, you've got the same quality, great analytics, great resume that could do the same job. That like really blew me away.
So in our tribe, I guess we would say that would be maybe initial underwriting. So let's say, you're farming for properties and you get something that comes across your desk. It may be from a broker, it may be from the seller themselves or one of your wholesalers, and you want to run it through your underwriting spreadsheet to see if it passes muster, if it's anything interesting to do. So you have access to a or a few virtual assistants that understand your spreadsheet, can run the data in it, gives you the information that you want, at least at first blush, to then decide whether this is just an opportunity, or if it's truly a deal, or if it's nothing at all and that you should just pass on. Is that how I understand it?
That's exactly correct. So like, there's a lot of different spreadsheets floating around. A lot of different gurus have their own, underwriting analytics. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. You're exactly right.
How many of those folks do you have at your disposal to be able to funnel deals to be able to take a look at?
At the moment, I have two. But I'm definitely starting to ramp up my marketing. So I will be probably ramping up that as well, because I'm, planning to acquire like crazy.
But let's talk about the marketing piece as well. And I think that may be an area where people maybe have some trepidation, marketing from the standpoint of talking to customers, or even just, sending mailers out, looking for leads. Tell me about, top of the funnel. How are you using virtual assistants, or are you using VAs to be able to fill the top of the funnel for opportunities to be able to look at before you send them over to be underwritten or to have the financial analysis done by the other VAs?
So great question, Scott. One of the toughest things that most solopreneurs or anybody out there starting a business is doing the work in the beginning themselves. And I highly recommend it because you got to figure out the know-how. Because before you could teach somebody, you got to know how to do it first. And so you got to figure out like, okay, how long does this take? What are the resources available? And then delegate it. And then with this person that I delegated some information to do my marketing, I let her kind of run with it and let her be resourceful. So like common things that she would use, Canva. Some of the marketing people use Canva a lot. Now, this is interesting that you bring this up, Scott, because with my marketing gal, she was a graduate of the University of the Philippines, which is the equivalent here in the US of a Stanford or a Harvard University. So really creme de la creme. Now, she's good. I still use her. She does a lot of different things today. However, what I was noticing was she was doing a lot of work. She was putting a lot of things on Instagram, a lot of different things on Facebook and LinkedIn and all these other things. The downside was she didn't quite understand how to properly use hashtags, descriptions, and tagging, etc., to the degree my other team is now working on now in India. They understood it. They were a full-on digital marketing media company. And so what happened was they're both still on board because I like both of them. And so I do a lot of split testing. And with my split test, I'm letting her still do her stuff. And then my other team in India do their stuff. And then I see traction. I see the followers go up. I see the engagement go up. And I see a lot of different analytics go up. And it's from the other group. And so I'm kind of at a crossroads. And, I like keeping good people around no matter what, but other people out there in the audience might have to make that decision. Do I let this other person go? Or good to great, Jim Collins, do I move this person out of the seat into another seat on the bus? Because I like them both, like I said. And so I'm kind of at a crossroads because my other team, my digital team in India, they're gaining major traction on the marketing. And how do I know? Because I had a split test. And now even more so that they go high analytics behind the scenes into my dashboards in Google and ConvertKit and all these other things that we're working on, YouTube, and we're looking behind the curtain to see the actual analytics.
Well, then the follow-up question to that then is, Joe, we've got accounting, bookkeeping that has been outsourced to, it seems like we gravitate towards India. We had a gentleman with an MBA in accounting. He's basically CPA level that was doing our bookkeeping in the beginning. And then we thought, well, wow, we're going to continue to go down that path for the financial side. And that's worked out fantastic. Many of our IT, whether it's one-off web projects or ongoing IT, it seems like, Eastern Bloc countries, Ukraine, Russia, around those areas, they seem to be very great parts of the world to get some folks that are tech savvy. And customer service has been in the Philippines for all the reasons you just mentioned. Culture very similar, English, and just that loyalty and that just oh gosh, I don't know, compassion for your fellow human being that we find in the Filipino culture. So those are the areas that we kind of concentrate on. So let's now let's speak to maybe the areas in which you can't give up. You found it's just like, I need to have somebody that's maybe at a C level, corporate level, executive side, maybe an area of your business where you feel like you just this is a place where I would probably only hire somebody in the US because of whatever that may be, culture or what have you. Are there any positions in which you feel like it has to be somebody that is stateside for any reason?
With that question, I would probably have to say it depends on the individual and what kind of business they're running. Because one of my colleagues, he runs a very big VA company and he has zero of his executive team, zero of his employees here in the US. He's the only one here in the US. Everybody, including his VP, his vice president in the company, is in the Philippines. So I guess it really depends on the individual. It depends on, what level of their business they are and where they are in scaling and growing. And I mean, it really, really depends on a lot of different
Mhm.
factors.
Yep. And it's not a trick question. It was just out of curiosity more than anything, because I don't know that there is a position. And you're right. It probably does depend upon the individual. Maybe there's a company out there that that is specific, but at the end of the day, there's successful businesses all around the world without Americans in it as well. So I don't think there's any reason. I just wondered if you would run across any area where you felt that was the case. So gosh, what do you see on the horizon? I mean, the way I see it, I think there's so many ways that these past 2 years have really accelerated the leveling of the playing field across the pay scale to accessibility to staff members and at the skill levels that I can only see that accelerating even further. Where we're seeing that more companies, even small businesses, by way of virtual assistants, that's probably not going to be much of a buzzword any longer, where it's just that it may become the norm, where businesses just have employees that are working for that company part-time or full-time, going forward all around the world in all types of industries. Do you see that the same way, or what kind of trends, since you're in this more than most, what kind of trends do you see happening, and what does that look like in 2022 and beyond?
Yeah, that also is a great question, Scott. The way I see it, I mean, it's pretty apparent what's going on. So a
Mhm.
lot of the office commercial buildings are suffering. There are higher vacancies than ever because they have figured out, wow, if I could have my employee at home be more productive, not to have to pay for the brick and mortar, this is an absolute no-brainer. And so a lot of them are moving to permanent work at home employees. That's what I'm already seeing. One of my neighbors, he even before the coronavirus pandemic, he was already working at home for the last 14 years. We're seeing more and more of this happening, and it will be the norm, in a lot of businesses. So this kind of global economy and this inter mixing of different businesses and cultures is going to be even more evident as we progress, into the future. That's what I'm seeing for sure. And you just got to learn, especially some of these bigger corporations with high overhead of employees. I mean, one of my clients, I've been coaching them for about 3 years, and they are very, very, very successful. They have 12 people on staff on their payroll. And from day one, I said, hey, you guys need to explore this VA. You got to check it out. Number one, it's going to cut your liability down to almost nothing. It's going to eliminate workers' comp, E&O, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. 3 years later, recently, they go, Joe, wow, I wish I would have done this a long time ago. So it was one of these things where I'm sharing with a lot of people that I coach that you need to explore it. I mean, because this isn't something new. When I started, when I hired my first VA was around 2008. So it wasn't like one of these things I thought of yesterday. I've been doing it for the last 13 years. And so how I managed to move into where I am today is it really depends, number one, from the cost prohibitive standpoint, do I hire a full-on company, or is this a position that I could hire that I don't need a middleman? If I could figure it out and I don't need a VA company, I'm going to cut my costs even lower by going direct to a freelancer and make sure I properly screen them, onboard, train them, and making sure that the right fit. And then I think a lot of people need to embrace that moving forward in the future. And I'll tell you what, I mean, from the business standpoint alone, profitability is going to go way, way up. Liability is going to go way, way down.
So, Joe, you mentioned earlier that you're getting ready, you're going to be adding more staff as you're going to be growing. And I think with a focus on the multifamily side, we see that whenever this recession, gets into full swing, that there's going to be a lot of opportunities for us in the self-storage side. Is that where you see the reason behind your anticipated growth in your business, or is it just a natural progression of your business that has just been taking off and flourishing in 2021?
I would say both.
Hmm.
And to answer that is, as I mentioned, my first venue with real estate was a long time ago, 1989. 1989 is about when I met Robert Allen. And I learned as I started to study more and understand more that real estate comes in cycles. Every 7 to 10 years, the market corrects. Now, this past one is an anomaly, where I thought maybe 3, 4 years ago, we were going to have a correction. And what happened was the market just kept going. And so what do I see in the future is a couple things. As long as the rates continue to stay low, we're going to see prices still jump. Now, the part that's going to be probably the killer is affordability and inflation. When that gets too high, well, people can't afford to pay their house, so they're going to rent. We're going to start to see a lot of different movement from that perspective. We're going to also see the movement from the baby boomers, people that are 1946 to 1964. We're going to see a lot of downsizing. We're going to see a lot of people selling off maybe their larger assets, the mobile home parks, the storage units, the multifamily. Well, this is where it gets really exciting for a lot of your students, a lot of folks like me who know how to kind of work this system or this market, where like they don't want to get nailed on capital gains. So creative financing comes into play. And so it's a win-win-win for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
When is this going to happen? When is this correction going to occur? Not exactly sure. I mean, Feds are probably a good answer to that question, because we just got to pay attention to what are they going to be doing with interest rates. We also got to figure out like, hey, are they going to stimulate the economy more with all these money that they're printing more and more? These PPP checks and EIDL checks and all this, what Robert Kiyosaki calls fake money. Well, that's really skewing our economy.
Well, like you, Joe, I have a following and a whole lot of folks that I talk to on a regular basis by way of a webinar and a podcast. And so I always, the caveat is always my crystal ball is broken or it's in the shop, because I have no idea, because like you, for the past 3 or 4 years, I'm saying we're 6 months away. Get ready, folks. We're 6 months away from the recession. And, we've kicked that can down the road multiple 6-month increments since we began keeping an eye on and preparing for that. And, I'll do it again. My crystal ball is broken. However, what we're looking at is, from what we hear, is that interest rates may be ticking up in second quarter, in which then we know, values begin to go down and cap rates begin to go up a bit. And so again, all that is doing is creating a sense of urgency in us to get the deals done that we want to for 2021. Is that, right now there's been a big push for the past, 2 months to close everything by December 31. And then a greater sense of urgency in the first quarter, just in case, I happen to be right, or all the folks that I listen to are correct, because we don't want to get caught, in a valuation slide if that indeed is the case. But all that means is that, if that is the case, no matter what you subscribe to in the timing of that, I like you, Joe, I began investing in real estate in 93. So 4 years after you, but began to listen to all the greats that you did. And then also Tim Ferriss in 2006, when he came out with the 4-hour work week. I had to think for a second there. So the 4-hour work week. And then it was in 2008 when I hired my first VA at the exact same time, and recognize all the benefits of that. So for any of you out there that are looking to grow and scale, or if you're looking to increase the speed at which you are going to move forward in the coming year, then absolutely you need to look at smart ways and perhaps some better ways adding staff to your organization. So, Joe, it's been an absolute pleasure to be able to catch up with you. Glad that we were able to make this happen. Before I ask you the last question that I have for you, how do people get in touch with you? You got a couple of businesses that keep you busy these days. So, how do folks get a hold of you and to catch a little bit more of what you're doing out there in the marketplace?
Either go to my websites, coachjoemendoza.com or joemendoza.com. It's the best way to get a hold of me. And I'm all over social media. So just type in Joe Mendoza.
Awesome. All right. So with that, Joe, you work with a lot of folks. You've been through 3 economic cycles now and know exactly what's coming up next. We don't like to give advice. We like to share experience around here, but is there some experience that you can share with folks to prepare for, what's coming up in the next economic cycle, no matter when it happens?
Couple things. So number one, do not become complacent. In 2008, that was one of the biggest lessons I ever learned because I thought I arrived. I'm like, oh my God, I'm in my multi-million-dollar house. I got a lot of money in the bank, multi-million-dollar portfolio. I arrived. So number one, don't become complacent because we know the end of that story. Number two, make sure you really, cash is king. Really make sure you are very liquid and also increase credit lines, line of credits, whatever you need to do to be ready, because they say winter is coming. Well, if it is, a deal is a deal, whether it's today, tomorrow, in the future, a deal is always there. You just got to make sure you're looking.
Yep. Understood. And words to live by. And I just want at least one more person to be able to speak that truth into our tribe so that everybody is aware of that. We do get complacent. And in 2008, who would have ever thought that, when Lehman Brothers fell, that the entire real estate market would fall overnight? And, when the music stopped, there's a whole bunch of people left without a chair yet again. And who would have ever thought that the country would absolutely shut down and go into a lockdown when the pandemic hit? And so we got a small taste of, what the next recession is going to look like because business stopped. We dropped off a cliff again, and nobody ever thought that was going to happen again. And the experts, again, we don't know if it's going to be true or not. If there's going to be something that is going to be, once again, cliff-like or cataclysmic, that will shut down the economy in a heartbeat. And if you got whether you got a small boat or a big old ship, it's too late and it's too difficult to navigate if you're not over leveraged, if you have cash, you've got the credit lines to be able to, weather that storm. So take Joe's advice, folks. So with that, Joe, once again, thanks so much for carving time out. I know you got an extremely busy schedule with the multiple businesses you have going on by way of a little difficult for us to get together for this call, but I'm so glad that we were able to do so, and I look forward to our next chat.
Thank you so much, Scott. It was a pleasure. Very, very nice having me on your show.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. Take care. We'll talk to you soon. Hey gang, wait, 3 things before you leave. First, don't forget to subscribe to the Self Storage Podcast and turn on your notifications so you never miss another episode. And while you're there, please leave us a 5-star review if you like the show. Second, be sure to share your favorite episodes and more via Instagram, and don't forget to tag us. And lastly, head to the links in the show description and hit the follow and subscribe button on Twitter and Facebook to get a front row seat as we grow and scale our business and bring you along with us. Take care.